Hey, see Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and along with my guy, Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. I'm going to start off this podcast before we get into Bucks conversation. I have a serious question for Nathan Marzion. I mean, it's so serious. I'm very intrigued. Only if you watch these videos on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page do you know what I'm talking about. So if you watch these videos of Green and Growing, or if you watch the videos of Kurt and Long, right, or the Spare Time Bowling Show podcast, the PBA podcast, you know that I normally am always wearing the same blue, like winter jacket. I always have it on for a couple of reasons. One, when I record in my basement, which is how we do the Green and Growing podcast, because I do it at night and I don't drive all the way back to the radio station. I always have my jacket on because it's always a little chilly down here. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is at the radio station, it also can be a little chilly, so I always have my jacket on. I hardly ever take it off unless I'm in some big meeting and I have to take it off. Otherwise, my blue jacket never comes off me. Nathan Marzion, on the other hand, always does this podcast from a room in his house. It's got big Fear the Deer banner up in the back that I'm very jealous of. It's amazing. Some nice crown molding up in the room, ceiling fan above him, got a door behind him, very nicely painted walls. Very nice. But I don't know how many times I can remember ever seeing Nathan Marzion record this podcast without a piece of Bucks apparel on. Do you own other clothing outside of Bucks apparel, Nathan Marzion?
Very, very little. I have like a couple of Packers shirts. I got a couple of Packer jerseys. Same with the Cubs. Same with Marquette. But for the most part, my T-shirts I wear are all Bucks stuff. My hoodies are all Bucks stuff. I don't really wear jackets that much, but that's pretty much it. Like I kind of load up at this time of year. I load up on T-shirts now because we're starting to get into that season. And then once, summer's starting to go down and it's starting to get to fall, I get some more hoodies and I'm stocking up for hoodie season. So yeah, I mean, that's covers 90% of it. And I get a lot of people like my friends and stuff that say the same thing, that are just like, I go out and all I wear is like my Bucks stuff. Like I'll wear, again, in the summer Bucks shirts, and then
Right.
fall and winter I'll wear my Bucks hoodies. And so people will be like, how much Bucks stuff do you have? Or just like, do you have other stuff? And it's like, this is pretty much all I wear, So I have,
so you don't wear it just for the podcast. I thought it was just because we were doing a Bucks podcast, so you wear Bucks gear to fit into what the podcast is doing. I was kind of feeling guilty, like maybe I should be wearing Bucks stuff every time we do a podcast too.
No, if you saw me anywhere, pretty much, there's a 90% chance I'll be wearing Bucks stuff. If it's a Sunday and the Packers are playing, okay, I'll probably wear Packers stuff. If it's, again, maybe the Cubs have a big game that day or something, okay, I'll wear Cubs stuff. Marquette on Friday, I'll wear Marquette stuff. But other than that, it's pretty much Bucks stuff year round. And again, when I, obviously have work clothes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, my everything. As soon as I get home, I change into, sweatpants and a Bucks hoodie and Bucks shirt, and yeah.
Okay, so I have to. I mean, I don't have to dress up probably like you. Do you wear a shirt and tie to your job, or
no? I can just wear like polos or
still business casual kind of.
Yeah.
Right. Same here. So like khakis, polos, all deal. So I'm going to show you something here. I got it right here. Look at this bad boy right here, Nathan Marzion. Look at that. That's Marquette, nice. Baby. Right here, right? I'll be wearing that on Friday. Got it for Christmas. I'm not even broken it out yet. Look, the tag is still on it. And I'm going to be putting this bad boy on Friday, wearing it to work on Friday to support Marquette. I got Badger stuff too, but obviously they're out of the tournament, so I won't be wearing that anytime soon again. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, because I was just very curious, I was like, every time I do this podcast, he's got some type of Buck stuff on, and it's always like the old school purple and green Buck stuff. Like, do you own any of the yellow Bucks merchandise or the blue Bucks merchandise? Or I'm sorry to start off the podcast picking on you about your clothing, but I've always kind of wondered about, because it always is the old school, like 1990s-esque Bucks stuff.
I most of the stuff I have is either current stuff. I have a couple hoodies that are the current logo, or very retro stuff, like again the purple, or I have one hoodie that is that deer with the ball, spaying the ball logo. But yeah, I mean, I've always really liked the purple stuff. I've liked the retro stuff a little bit. So just it's a little bit different. It's Bucks, but it's not just like, I don't know. It's to me somewhat of like a sign of like, okay, that was the when I first started liking the Bucks, those were the colors.
Gotcha.
And
yeah.
I kind of like having that where it's like, just like, okay, yeah, this is I've been here since these days. And I don't know, it's just kind of something that I've always enjoyed. But I do have definitely a decent amount of like the newer ish stuff. I got some, the 2021 champs stuff,
Right.
stuff like that. So a couple of jerseys. I got a Dame jersey. I got a one Giannis jersey, and so yeah.
Okay,
you
let's
know,
fast forward. Let's fast forward because I got another question. I swear to God, we're gonna get to Bucks topics. Just hold on, don't go anywhere. Pat Beverley injury news. We got to get to. We got to talk about the Bucks choking away a 19-point lead. We're gonna get to all that. So I have another one for you. There is a uniform color combination that got made fun of quite a bit. Well, first of all, when the Bucks had purple, people hated that, hated it with a passion. And we've talked about that. When we changed it from purple to the next color, we went back to old school Buck colors, and it was red and green, and people were all bent out of shape. Oh, they're Christmas colors. Oh, stupid. Now, you know me. I love me some Christmas. So that was my favorite uniform combination, the red and the green. Had the Bucks red jerseys, which I will only say I have big issue with because they were Bulls colors. So when they would play the Bulls, they'd be like, oh, it's a red out. Why are we doing a red out against the Bulls for? Like, what are we doing? Why would you do that for? All right, wear a red jersey against the Bulls. Makes no sense whatsoever. I like those jerseys the best. What are your favorite jerseys that the Bucks have worn from, I guess, the purple ones where you started to where we are now?
I honestly, it's just
It's
for
gonna
the
be the
retro
purple
aspect.
ones. That's gonna
Just
be
for the retro aspect of it, I like
uh,
the purple.
all right.
But if you are telling me like okay, if that wasn't considered, if that wasn't retro, and these were all just like, if I had never seen any of these jerseys before, didn't know any of the history, and you just laid them all out in front of me, oh, I really liked the cream ones that they had,
So did I.
with the deer logo. Those were really clean. I mean, their current ones are good. I wasn't a huge fan of the red ones, when they had the red and green, like
Yep.
that. Those weren't my favorite, but I did like the purple. I like the big bucks that it has on the purple ones. Like, that's something I really like about that.
That was a great jersey. Love that
And
jersey.
then yeah, I mean, I like their current ones, like just the basic ones. I don't know if we probably talked about this, but I'm not a huge fan of like them coming out with new jerseys all the time, because it's like I
Agreed.
like to have some type of identity, and you wear your main jerseys 90% of the time, and then maybe you have a retro jersey that you pull out, or an alternate jersey you pull out a few times a year. But I I just am like, okay, I think they should be, basically judged on their main jerseys. And I do like their main jerseys much more than I liked their ones, prior to 2015. So yeah, that I do want to, while we're talking about jerseys, Marquette, I have long said, needs to go back to the ones they had in, like, from 2010 to 2013, where they had the checkers on the side, and you had all the different color. You had the light blue, you had navy blue, you had white, you had gold.
Those were
Um,
nice. I like those.
and they
Yep.
had the awesome word mark on the front. Those were sick. If you just look up like Marquette 2013 jerseys, those are my favorite. Those uniforms were my favorite. And you had the matching, the pants with the checkers on the side. I absolutely love those, and I wish they would go back to them. I know they're going to get new jerseys next year, because it's been like 5 years, and they usually get them every 5 years. So I I'm praying that they go back to them, but I don't have much hope. But or at least something similar to that. But I know, like, when I was younger, I got a jersey that was that jersey. I got the shorts in both navy blue and light blue. So that's always been, more than anything, Bucks. Like, that has always been my biggest jersey, or my favorite jersey of any team I've ever had, is that those Marquette jerseys, and I wish they would go back to them.
Are you a big Bucks hat guy? Are you a big
I'm not
wearer
a
of
hat guy.
caps? No.
No.
Not a cap guy. I love wearing hats. I love wearing baseball caps. I like the trucker hats. A lot of people hate trucker hats. I like the trucker hat style myself. Maybe it's because I'm an old guy. I'm not quite sure. All right, take a quick time. I'll come back since we blew 9 minutes there on Nathan's life and my life and what we like and don't like with clothes. I will come back on the other side, and we're going to talk about this Pat Beverley injury because I was doing work at my desk, minding my own business. My buddy Ian texted me, and he's like, Pat Beverley. And I'm like, dude, I'm working. What? Have not been on social media. And then he sends me the screenshot and the whole deal. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So we'll talk about that coming up next here on the Green and Growing Podcast. Steve, Sparky, Fifer, Nathan, Marzion. Download it on your Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcast at. Also, can check it out on the YouTube on the Odyssey Sports page. Back after this. Hey, it's Steve, Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM. The Fan, host of the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show served up by Wendy's after every Milwaukee Bucks game on 1250 AM The Fan. Just turn it on your radio dial. If you're not in the Milwaukee area, you can also stream us on the Odyssey app. Nathan Marzion is here as well. Follow him at Nathan Marzion. What will the impact be of the Patrick Beverley injury to the Bucks? And ligament injury, Pat Bev saying 4 to 6 weeks. But then, this is the crazy part. He's on his podcast. His agent calls and he's like, shh, this is my agent. Like he's going to hear us. Like we can't talk to Pat Bev. So he has his agent and you hear the conversation. And Pat Beverley is pretty much like, I'm playing. Like, that's it. You know what I'm doing. I'm playing. If they're saying I can play, then I'll play through it one way or the other. And the agent's talking about, hey, I talked to him and said, can we tape it up to try and keep it a little more stable, kind of, help with the pain, da-da-da-da-da. And they said, they absolutely, they can work with them. And then Beverly's like, hey, man, but I'm going to take this slow now. And his agent's like, yeah, man, it's just about the playoffs, right? That's all it's about. And Bev's like, yeah. So I don't think you're going to see him anytime soon in a game. But it sounds like he's going to try and play through the pain and try and play with it. The amount of pain with a ligament injury, and it's, if it gets touched, it gets hit, it whatever, that can be pretty bad. I mean, so we're talking about pain tolerance here for a player of whether or not you can play through it. And I'm telling you right now, not every player is going to play through what he's about to play through. It's just not going to be a thing. And I give him a lot of credit for trying this. Now, who knows? I mean, he may play a game and be in so much pain and be like, nope, I can't do it. I tried. I cannot do this. So it may last a game and it might be over. But they need him, man. Marzion, they need Patrick Beverley. Like, I wasn't as convinced necessarily one way or the other. The leadership obviously is great. The defense is great. Offensively, he doesn't give you anything. But his mind is what you're in it for, right? I mean, the dude is super smart with basketball. But now you see him not play against the Lakers, and you see an impact that he has. This is going to be a big impact if he can't play.
Yeah. Now, a couple things that are making me optimistic. As you said, like he talked about how he wants to play and try to just, be there for the playoffs, hold off on getting surgery. It is his wrist, which for a guy that 90% of what he's giving you is defense. That's not, if you're going to play through an injury, that's not the worst injury you have to play through when you're just playing defense for the most part. Obviously it could affect his shot a little bit, but you're not going to rely on him to hit a ton of shots. You're not going to rely on him to have the ball a ton.
But Nathan, if he's running through a defense and runs into a screen and he smacks that wrist, which is going to happen, that's where the pain's going to come in.
Of course, there are moments it will hurt, but I'm saying it's better than if he had an ankle injury and you're saying he's not going to look. He's not. If you're trying to play through an ankle injury as a defender, even if you play through it, you're not going to be the same. This is something. Obviously, any injury you're playing through, like there's a risk of re-injuring it. There's a risk. Sometimes it's going to flare up, but it's not the worst part of the body for him to have injured right now with the role he plays on this team. The second thing is just from a selfish standpoint. And this is a very selfish way of looking at it, but this is his only year under contract with us. If it does, for us, there is no downside to him playing. It's like if he tries to play and it does flare up, it does even get worse. This doesn't affect the Bucks down the road. It's not like if it was Giannis or Dame or something, and you're saying, man, I don't want them to play because if it really affects the rest of their career, that could be detrimental to us down the road. Like it's not really a case like that. So you're just hoping he can play. You're hoping he can try to play through this. I will totally understand if he can't at any point. I'm not gonna, totally expect him to play every single game or down the stretch and in the playoffs and everything. But you hope he can give you some minutes. You hope he can give you just that presence that he always brings. And I mean, again, that's the thing too, is even if he's playing hurt, he's a guy that even if he himself is not playing his best on the court, his presence makes a positive impact, And so I think just no matter what, having him out there, even if he's not 100%, even if he's not that effective, from a basketball standpoint and on the court during the game, he can still be effective in other ways, and he can still be a positive impact player in those scenarios. So you're just hoping he can play. You're hoping he can give you something, because as you said, we've seen his impact so far, in his time here, and He's just a guy that you hope he can give you 15-ish minutes off the bench and be a spark guy and be an energy guy for you. So credit to him for sounding like he wants to play through this thing, and hopefully we can see him.
The other thing I'll say about Patrick Beverley is, and if you saw the presser the other day after the game, I think it was after the game, he was talking about this defense where instead of switching, the guy just falls off and takes the guy instead of making the switch. And he talks about the idea behind it and why they're doing it and so forth. And he goes, "That's my defense. That I came up with this concept. This is my defense." And you just listen to him talk. And again, as I've said, I've never liked this dude in the NBA. Never, ever, 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 never have I liked Patrick Beverley, right? I mean, I never got to the point of dislike like it was for KG for me. But I've never liked him. I just don't like the way he goes about his business. But now that he's on this team, and you really get to hear him talk more because, he talks after games, he's in the pressers, and now he's got this goofy podcast like we do. And he won't shut up on that. And so you kind of get to learn him a little bit. This dude's going to be a hell of a coach if he wants to be a coach, man. I mean, because he understands that you have to put in effort. He understands you have to play defense. He understands how concepts work and so forth. The way his brain works. Just go back to when they traded for Pat Bev to begin with. And he's on that podcast and he's on the phone with the Bucks assistant coach going, "Hey, man, we can do this with Giannis. We can do this. We can do that. We can do this." And he was right into coach's mode as a player. That's why I say, as much as, you're going to miss his defense and everything else, you just really want him there to help Rivers out and help the assistant coaches out with whoever is in the game and playing. If that means they've got to play somebody that normally doesn't get minutes, hopefully he can kind of be an extra set of eyes for this person and tell them what's happening and be yelling from the bench, kind of like the coaches are, trying to get guys into position. He can still be helpful even if he's not on the floor, but they really need him on the floor.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. And, again, like I said, I just am hoping that he can gut through this thing, and knowing him, he'll try to, he's just the type of guy that, he's not gonna want to sit out. He's not gonna try to preserve his future, preserve, anything. It's like, hey, I came here to try to win a title. You guys brought me here to try to win a title, and I'm gonna do what it takes to do that and help you guys do that. And again, and even if he isn't able to play, worst case scenario, he is out. As you said, he will still be able to bring some of that, on the bench and talking to guys in that leadership and just firing guys up a little bit. That doesn't always have to come on the court playing. But again, obviously having him on the court playing would be a huge bonus. And so, again, like I said, just hoping he can get back for the playoffs and provide some of, what we've become accustomed to him providing.
Take a quick time out, come back. Other side, we're going to talk about a post-game show that was on fire last night, talking about the Bucks and the Lakers. Social media was on fire. Even had Frank Madden participating from the Locked On Bucks podcast as well. I'll talk about that coming up next after the Bucks blow a 19-point lead to the Lakers in the fourth quarter. That is straight ahead. Actually, it's not. Well, technically, it's not. We're recording this Wednesday night, so it's last night for us. You're not going to hear this till Thursday, so it'll be a couple nights away from you. Back after this on the Curtin Long podcast. Actually, it's Green and Growing podcast. See, I'm losing my damn mind. Back after this. Hey, Sparky Fifer. Welcome back to another edition of Green and Growing. Check me out at 12:50 a.m. The Fan, Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show after every Bucks game, served up by Wendy's. Nathan Marzion is there in his Bucks attire. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Okay, so Bucks blow a huge lead there in the fourth quarter, about 8 minutes and change, whatever it was, in the fourth quarter. They decide Chris Middleton was going to play Superman at the end of that game, which was ridiculous. And then they go to overtime. Lillard has his moment. We thought it was his moment. They still figure out a way to screw it up and get to double overtime. That neither team can score for 3 minutes in the double overtime before eventually the Lakers end up winning the game and the Bucks lose. This is the second time out of 2 chances the Bucks have had the Lakers. And the second time out of 2 chances they played them without freaking LeBron James. And the second time out of 2 chances that D'Angelo Russell, who wasn't great in the first half of this game, took over in the second half of this game and ended up with 29 points. Austin Reeves had a damn triple-double against you and a wide-open 3 in which Lillard nor Malik Beasley attempted to even run at the guy. Okay, you screwed up. Miscommunication, whatever, fine. I get it. They both stood there and watched him set and take that shot. That was infuriating. A lot of that is infuriating. Day after, I'm still pissed off about it, like I was during the post-game show. Your thoughts on what we saw last night? Because I know Marzion. I've learned a lot about Marzion over the course of time doing this podcast. If we would have done a podcast last night, Nathan Marzion is pissed off when he's not looking into the camera. He's looking up over the camera. He's looking sideways. He's looking everywhere. If we would have done that podcast last night, that's what you would have had. You would have had a pissed off Marzion, and he would have been hot. He would have been like, I don't want to do this. I want to talk about this stupid game. He would have been mad. So I know how Marzion probably was by the time that game was all said and done. So tell me, how was the game watching experience for you? Was your dad with you watching it? Were you both losing your minds there after they blew that lead in the fourth quarter? How did it all play out?
No, it was just me, and I was actually upstairs in my room watching on my laptop, thinking, okay, we're good. And then all of a sudden it got down to 5, and that's when I went back downstairs, put it on the big TV, and started stressing out a little bit. And yeah, just a very frustrating, last quarter. So you can pretty much blame everyone for a little bit for that going wrong. Dame had some bad moments in the fourth and overtimes. Obviously, Chris had some bad moments, especially in the fourth. And then Giannis had his struggles. Bobby Portis missed an easy shot. Malik Beasley missed a bunch of threes. You can go down the line, and you can blame Doc Rivers for some stuff. It's like everyone kind of played a part in that collapse, and there were still some positives. There were still some, stretches where like they were getting pretty consistently good looks, but they weren't always falling. And then Giannis misses the free throws, and all of a sudden, okay, oh yeah, they lose. It's just tough. I try not to because again, the game ends, and I'm like, okay, this is frustrating. Everyone's obviously very upset. It's just a bad loss, ugly loss, dumb loss. But I'm like, okay, an hour ago, everyone was pretty happy with the direction this team was heading in. I'm not going to let 1 hour reverse that or change that too much. Obviously, you can say, okay, they still got some things to iron out and work through. And this was, you wanted to see this better down the stretch, but they're going to be fine. It's a frustrating loss. This happens in the regular season. It's funny because yesterday I was randomly thinking about that first LA game, and I was like, man, I remember how upset I was after that game, and I was so frustrated, and I was so just irritated. And I'm like, that game doesn't matter. It's 2 weeks later. That game doesn't matter. That game doesn't mean anything. We're gonna feel the same way about this game in a week and a half, 2 weeks. We're gonna be like, who cares that we lost that game? It was frustrating in the moment.
Okay, I'll tell you when this game's gonna matter. This game's gonna matter if they do this in the playoffs. Then this game is going to matter, because then people are going to say, we've seen this already. And if they do it again, that's when people are going to rally back to this game. I agree with you. I mean, some people last night were saying, oh, they're going to get bounced in the first round. It's going to be one and done, whatever.
Yeah. And real quick, that's the stuff where I'm like, you were not even close to saying this an hour ago. Nobody was. Everyone was like, this team's headed in the right direction. You can't go from this team's headed in the right direction. Everything's looking good going, as we head towards the playoff run. And then you have, 1 quarter of bad basketball and it's bounced in the first round. They're screwed. It's like, no, you can say, oh, that was a concerning quarter. They gotta iron that out. We need to see them improve that. But you can't make it adjust your perspective that much is what is.
But you have to understand, some of the people that are in that boat were in that same boat with Adrian Griffin. They were already there, right? So now with Doc, they're like, oh, Doc's going to help. Doc's going to help. Doc's going to help. Then they go 3-7 in that first stretch. And now they're really like, oh, they're screwed. It doesn't even matter who the coach is. They just aren't going to be able to get this done. So I think it's that same group of people that questioned it earlier in the season, never really stopped. Maybe they're not vocal while the Bucks are winning, but once there's a hiccup, then they're like, see, that's the team that we saw earlier in the year. This is going to be a problem. I think I could be wrong. I think that's a lot of those fans that you're seeing on social media and so forth talking like that. From my perspective, there was just a lot of things that irritated me throughout that game. And I know I'm talking to a guy that's not the biggest Bobby Portis fan, but he's not very good defensively. We all know this. So your decision to put Bobby Portis in over Brook Lopez in a game in which the opposing team's best player is a big man, to me, was beyond knucklehead, because now you're asking Giannis, go defend him. Oh, by the way, now go play against him on offense. You wore him down sooner than he had to have been worn down. The man was walking up and down the floor in the second overtime. He was so gassed. Reggie Miller pointed it out on the broadcast how tired he was. Lillard was absolutely gassed too. And not to say the Lakers weren't. They absolutely were. Davis was playing through however he hurt his knee or thigh, whatever the hell that was. But to me, that was not a game where you should have pulled Brook Lopez and put Bobby Portis in. That was not the time. Now, if you're in a battle and it's a small ball team and he's getting out quick and whatever, fine. In that situation, when it's a big, you don't pull him. If they're playing Joel Embiid, you don't pull him. You let him play and take that abuse on the other side so Giannis doesn't have to, especially when you get into the overtime and double overtimes of the world and Giannis is zapped. And to leave him sitting out there on an island having to do that possession after possession was absolutely driving me bananas, Marzion.
Yeah. And as you said, you could totally tell both teams in that second overtime were gassed. I mean, nobody could make a shot for the first like 3 minutes of it. And yeah, I think that played a role. As you said, there's matchups and moments where taking out Brook makes sense, and nobody's going to really complain about it. But this didn't seem like one of them. And obviously, like the Bobby Portis thing didn't really work. He wasn't very good on either end down the stretch. So I haven't minded. There's been a couple moments this season where they have done that, but that I haven't minded it. Again, when it's been typically smaller, quicker teams, and okay, you're going to play Brook a little bit less. But yeah, I didn't think last night was really the time to do that. And overall, I guess one of my concerns with this team, one of the things that if I did have to say, okay, why are they not going to win the title? Even if they do play, even if Dame plays pretty well, Giannis plays well, Chris plays pretty well, why would they? What would keep them from where? What would keep them from reaching the title? There's times, and I don't want to act like this is all the time because it's not, but people will. But there are times that they just play dumb basketball, and you're just like, man, like. But the thing that keeps me optimistic is they played dumb basketball in 2021 and they won the title. Now, obviously, you want to play smart basketball, but there's just times where it's like, Chris, what were you doing there, man? Like, come on, that was a dumb possession. Bobby obviously has his dumb moments. Giannis sometimes, late in the game he'll take a jumper and it's like, what is that? And I don't know. I'm not saying this was totally stupid, but Dame fouling, when he has 5 fouls, didn't end up mattering much because AD hit the free throws to make it 4, but he fouled. He was the one that fouled AD, and all of a sudden he's out. So even if he does miss and you have a 3-point game and you go into a third overtime, Dame's not out there. Just stuff like that you're like, I just want to see them be more consistently just smart and make the right decisions more often. They're not always going to make the right decision. You're going to have some dumb moments, but you want to see them limit them. And I don't know, it just feels like there's still a few too many games where you're like, man, they just seemed kind of dumb tonight. They just didn't play very smart, and maybe they rushed things or just whatever, whatever the case is. So that's something I'm looking at, and I think they've made progress with it compared to where they were at the beginning of the year. But still, last night's again a good reminder of like it's something they got to work on. It's something that late in a game. This is the first time really that late in a game recently, a close game where you've had all 3 of your big 3. And I think you could tell there's a little bit of that. Okay, whose turn is it? Whose ball is it? Who should get it? I thought there were some good possessions, again, where they seemed to know what they were doing, and it was like, okay, we're gonna do a Giannis Dame kind of pick and roll thing, but then Dame's gonna kind of hand it off to Chris, and then you have an action off of that. I don't mind that. Like that was good. Had some purpose. But then there's also there were those stretches in the fourth quarter where it was kind of like, all right, we're giving it to Chris, I guess, and he's going to go try to make a play. And he started missing his mid ranges. And then there was a couple Giannis possessions where, again, you kind of give it to Giannis and he's kind of doesn't know exactly what to do, settles for a jumper. And it's like, man, go back to just, what worked so well. And the reason they have like 138 offensive rating since the All-Star break in the clutch and are one of the best clutch teams in the NBA since the All-Star break and have been for most of the year is because you've ridden that Dame Giannis pick and roll and you've done what you're supposed to do and just played. Again, that's smart basketball. It's like you have Dame and Giannis, you run that action and whatever comes off of it. It's usually going to be something good. So just kind of calming down and being like, let's run that. Like, let's not panic here. Let's not freak out. Let's not rush things. Let's settle down, go to the action that works and, see what you get off of it. So that's kind of, again, the stuff I'm looking for, and I'm not panicking about it because this right now, at least as of late, is the outlier game. They've been really good in the clutch for multiple games before this. This isn't like, this is now months of them just struggling in the clutch and they can't do anything in the clutch. No, they had been really good in the clutch, and this was just kind of a game where it was like, man, it didn't work out. It didn't look as pretty. You got to work on it. But another thing I think too, before, sorry, real quick, but I thought a couple of the out of timeout plays were pretty good.
Damn right they were. That
Yeah,
alley-oop, that should have been finished had it not been for Anthony Davis holding him trying to get up in the air.
yeah, the alley-oop was good. I know another one, Dame got a good look off of it, and then that the one with, there was 3 seconds left, tie game in overtime, Bucks are getting the ball, and you got it to Dame on the run, drive into the hoop, like, that's a good look, for especially for only having 3 seconds to get it to, the guy that everyone knows they're trying to get the ball to get it into him, and he gets, he's getting a head start towards the rim, was good. AD made a nice block, it ended up being a tough shot, but that was good, so I was happy with that stuff. It wasn't like they came out and just, okay, we gave it to Giannis and didn't know what to do. They seem to have some purpose there.
I have one other thing I want to address on this podcast that I address on the post-game show. But in case you missed the post-game show, by the way, all those post-game shows after games are on your Odyssey app or at 1250 amthefan.com right there on the front page. Just go to the website, boom, pick what game podcast you want to listen to. They're all right there. I want a rule made in the NBA next year. And I'm sure it happens across the NBA in different games. I'm sure this wasn't the first time it's happened in the NBA, but it's the first time where I've been paying attention. And really, the only reason I knew was because TNT kept showing it. I don't want you to be able to talk to referees in timeouts if you're not playing. If you're in street clothes like LeBron James, sit your behind down on the bench or be in your huddle. But you are not allowed to talk to Tony Brothers or any other NBA referee. If you're not good enough to play, then you're not good enough to be involved in the game talking to the referees. Like, that was absolutely ridiculous. He talked to Tony Brothers more than Darvin Ham did in that game. Then Pat Beverley sees what's going on. He knows he's getting in the refs' heads. So he's like, well, I better start talking to these guys. So now he's out on the floor and he's talking to the referees. There should be a rule. Those guys should not be allowed onto the floor to talk to those NBA refs. You want to yell at a referee from the sidelines from your bench? Do what you got to do. But in timeouts, you're not allowed to go on the floor and talk to the referees. That has got to be stopped. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, LeBron was annoying last night with that stuff. And, I agree. It's like you shouldn't be able to, if you're not part of the game, you're not part of the game. And, obviously the coaches can, they're actively involved in the game, but it's like, if you're inactive for the game, you shouldn't be able to talk to refs, persuade refs, and try to make some type of difference that way. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there should be something implemented.
All right, 3-game trip here, road trip. So you start off Thursday night against the Pelicans, then you go to Atlanta, and then you end up with the lowly Wizards after that. 3 games. We're 2 weeks out pretty much. It's like April 13th or 14th, whatever the last game is. You're 2 weeks out from this season being over. You got to go now. Now you got to be playing your best basketball. I 3 wins, no losses. That's all I'm going to settle for here. They better not lose one of these 3 games on this West Coast trip. I want this team to start playing as we're getting closer to the playoffs. It's no longer November or December or January. Now it's get on a run. And I saw you talking about prior to the game or early in the game about Giannis and the MVP. He's only winning the MVP if this team rolls off like 8, 10 in a row, something crazy, and kind of is going into the playoffs as the hot team. Like, nobody wants to deal with this team. Giannis is a beast. Lillard's playing well. Here we go. If they don't get on that type of run winning, he could be on a great run personally, but they've got to go out here and be that hot team the last 2 weeks for him to have a shot at this thing, I think.
They don't need to go 3-0. I'm just going to say that.
3-0.
Do I think they could go 3-0? Do I want them to go 3-0? Obviously. But I mean, it's too.
If they lose to the Wizards, listen to me. If they lose to the Wizards next week, you won't have to turn on 1250 on the radio. You could just open up your windows. You'll hear me screaming from Hale's Corners. I promise you.
But okay. But let's say, you play the Pelicans, a very good basketball team. Let's say the Pelicans shoot 45% from 3 and they're just really on, and you're a little bit off, and you lose that game, but you win another 2. I don't think anyone's like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. Well, they're not ready for the playoffs. It's like they lost one of the 3 games.
At some point, you have to show who you are. At some point, you have
you can
to.
play well. You can play well without ending up winning the game. And in the regular season, I say this. Obviously, once you come playoff time, you got to find ways to win. You have to find ways to win. But in the regular season, I'm not going to look at games as like, if they don't win this game, they're not ready for the playoffs. Oh, if they don't win this game, they're not good enough, and they have to win this game. It's like, man, they could play really, really well and still lose because the other team just plays better. Like, that can happen. I'm not saying that happens a lot, but it can happen.
You are not going to say that in the playoffs. You are not going to say that
But
in the
the playoffs is
playoffs.
a different story. The playoffs
You are
is
not going to say that in the playoffs. Well, they played good, Spark, but the other team played better. That's how it goes.
Well, like I said, playoffs are a different story because you're much more strict about, okay, you have to find ways to win. If you don't win, you don't win. But this isn't the playoffs. This isn't the playoffs.
See, that's where you and I disagree. I think when you get to about 2 weeks out, that mindset has to start setting in. Like, you have to start playing like, okay, playoffs are 2 weeks away. We have got to start playing at a higher level here, getting ready. We have to start ramping ourselves up to get into the postseason. You have to do that. If, in my opinion, if you just keep playing this laissez-faire basketball of, well, yeah, we lost. We'll win the next one. We lost again. We'll win the next one. If that's the attitude for the next 2 weeks and you don't start to ramp yourself up to get ready for the postseason, now you're setting yourself up going that first round. Now you're like, okay, now we got to figure out how to flip the light switch on where it should be, to me, a ramp up as you get in. Baseball is a perfect example of that. You look at baseball, a lot of times that hot team going in the playoffs tends to be that team that makes the run in the playoffs. NFL, same thing. Very rarely do you see a team going into the playoffs in the NFL losing the last 2 or 3 games in a row that goes on to win a Super Bowl. Most of the time, it's teams that are playing well going into the postseason. I want that momentum. And in my mind, that needs to start. That process, that mindset needs to start developing here over the next 2 weeks.
I obviously would like to see it. That's ideal. But to me, it's not a necessary thing. It's not like you have to. Last year, the Nuggets did not end the season well at all, and they went on to win the title. And to me, like you said, like flipping the switch type of thing. To me, they flipped the switch at the All-Star break. And I know like they've lost games since then. They've had some ugly moments since then, but that doesn't mean you didn't flip the switch. Flipping the switch doesn't mean winning every single game. Flipping the switch doesn't mean you're going to look good all the time. It's just about finding like, okay, they just look better consistently. They look good consistently. They look like a better basketball team. It doesn't mean they're going to win every game, but down the stretch here, they could look like a playoff ready team and still lose 3 games. Like, that can happen. That's realistic.
For me, flipping the switch is an increase in intensity and an increase in execution. You're executing at a higher level more consistently. Yeah. That's flipping a switch to me.
But if that happens, if you see that on the court and they lose, what's your take then?
No, but that's one game. I understand what you're saying. You're saying my 3-game take. I understand what you're saying. But either way, over the next 2 weeks, you have to see it get better. It cannot be this inconsistent stuff where, we played good for 3 quarters and then we let a quarter get away. We played good for 2 quarters, but we forgot about the other 2. We played good for 3.5 quarters, but we forgot to finish the game. That type of stuff has to stop. It just does. You can't be down 15 points going into the second quarter, and you can't be blowing 20-point leads in the fourth quarter. You have to. That Oklahoma City game, as I said after that game, that's how it's supposed to look every game, where it's like that. That's what it's supposed to look like. You don't have to shoot 60% from 3 or nothing like that, but the defensive intensity and everything that goes along with it, that's how it's supposed to look for 4 quarters, night in, night out. Maybe they're not capable of that. Maybe they can't do it. I don't personally think they can, but that's why I think that mindset has to start now. Doc has to start hammering it now. Look, we're going to start getting ourselves ready for this playoff intensity as we get going here in the next couple of weeks. Because remember, they're going to get additional rest because they got to wait for the playing tournament to get done. So they're going to be sitting. So if you already aren't playing at a great level, now you sit for 3 or 4 days, whatever it's going to be before you play. I don't know. I think it's a lot to ask. I do, but we'll see.
I know, but again, I'm trying to, and I've kind of tried to do this all season of urging people to look at how they're playing and not just always the score. Because again, you can play good and lose just like you can play bad and win. We played bad and won many times under Adrian Griffin.
Sure.
You can do the opposite as well. They could look good and still lose a few games down the stretch here. But if they're like, if you're watching a game and it's like, okay, the defensive intensity is there, but the other team is making some tough shots and, the offense looks good. The execution's fine, but they're missing some open shots or maybe someone's just a little bit off. I can't be like, oh, this team's not ready for the playoffs. It's like they're executing fine. Now the results aren't there right now, but it depends. There might be some games where they suck and you're like, okay, that was worrisome. I thought the fourth quarter was a little worrisome last night because they didn't look the part. They didn't look very good. But there have been some losses in the Doc era where I was like, that's not really a bad loss. Like I thought they looked good. I thought they looked fine. They just didn't end up winning the game. And again, just like there were several wins during the Adrian Griffin era where it was like they didn't really look all that good, but they won the game. Does them winning the game just mean, oh, they're great, they're fine, everything's great? And does them losing the game just mean, oh, they're not ready, they're terrible, they have to totally revamp this? No, I mean you have to try to separate what you're seeing from just the results of the game. Most of the time they will align. If they look good, usually they're going to win. But there are some times, where down the stretch here, they're going to look good and lose a game. Try not to let that, if that happens, discourage you too much from like, as long as they looked good and it seemed like what they were doing will win you the game most of the time and win you games in the playoffs. I'm not going to get too mad at them losing in the regular season when they look like that.
There he is. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. We'll be back. We'll do it again next Monday. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the tournament. Have a good one. Toodles.